There are going to be a lot of people that are really upset about Collin Chandler entering the transfer portal, but I have to ask the question, just how big of a loss is this for the Wildcats?
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, you know why we're here. What's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe. On today's episode of the show, there's no other way to roll into this other than that Collin Chandler was expecting a lot of money from Kentucky to stay in Lexington, and Kentucky was not willing to match that number, so he leaves more than likely for the BYU Cougars. Is this a big loss for the Cats? We're going to dive into that on today's show, as well as take a look at 3 players in the transfer portal that you should be aware of. We're going to talk about Rob Wright tomorrow. So we're not going to talk about him today. We're going to discuss Rob Wright tomorrow. But we will be talking about some other names that Kentucky has contacted or already had a Zoom call with. And we'll just give you my thoughts on those 3 players. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there, we're free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube live right now, would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast after the fact, would love it if you subscribe there as well. What a doozy. An information bomb here on a Wednesday afternoon. A lot of different things going on in the Kentucky sphere. We had a lot to touch on today. I was getting my notes together for the show later this evening. And sure enough, news breaks. Collin Chandler is entering the transfer portal. And initially, my reaction to this was pretty negative. My big question, as soon as I saw the news, was, how is Kentucky going to replace that outside shooting? We talk about continuity. We talk about experience. We talk about how valuable those things are, the things that Collin Chandler possesses, how clutch he was this past season for the Cats. And then a tweet from Matt Jones. Sources tell KSR that 2 days ago, Chandler asked for a number that would have been the second largest amount any player has gotten at Kentucky. Kentucky declined to match. And apparently, and I can't confirm this, apparently the number was $3.2 million. I'll just read you Collin Chandler's stats here. And I want you to think with me for a second. I know a lot of you are probably upset about this. I know a lot of you are probably not too happy. But I need you to listen to this. 9.7 points. 2.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.2 steals, shooting 43.5% from the floor and 41% from 3, with a 109.5 defensive rating. I have to ask you, is that worth $3.2 million to expect that player to become a more versatile offensive weapon, to not be a liability on defense off ball anymore, to be as consistently clutch as he was for the middle of the season, which, by the way, just going to go ahead and throw this out there, he wasn't clutch for the final few games of the year, He couldn't get his shot going. So actually, from the Texas A&M game on, he shot 24% from 3. When it boils down to it, 9.7 points for a 40% three-point shooter with the lack of versatility that he had elsewhere in his game, frankly, is not worth the money to Kentucky. I think that this is the right decision. A lot of you are going to be upset for, I think, very valid reasons, various reasons. Actually, Captain Crash literally just said it's not worth that much money, but Collin Chandler is good for the culture and has shown capacity for big improvement. I think those are fair arguments. I don't think he's the starting shooting guard on a national championship team. I don't. And $3.2 million, you're not going to throw that out for a backup. You're just not going to do it. I think that he would have been good for team chemistry. I think he would have been good for vibes. I think he would have been good for shooting. He couldn't put the ball on the floor, and he couldn't stay consistent as an off-ball defender. That's what we're dealing with here. A one-trick pony who, it sounds like, wanted to go home. Collin's a great six man. I agree with that. As your six man ain't worth $3.2 million. It's not worth the money. So I think Kentucky has to, and I think it's a good thing for them to go into the transfer portal and look to find replacements. Now, the interesting thing, and we'll get to this more in depth when we talk about Rob Wright tomorrow. The interesting thing about who Kentucky is looking at right now is they're not exactly pursuing any sort of like high volume catch and shoot guy from just about anywhere. They're not really doing that. They're going after more scoring volume overall with average to slightly above average efficiency or slightly below. They're not looking to add a Collin Chandler right now, it doesn't seem like. But somebody like Rob Wright at the point could possibly replace that. Another player that we're going to talk about today that plays the two and maybe has some issues outside of his shooting could be the answer to the question, could be the solution here. So, yes, I think it stinks that he's leaving for BYU. He's going home. My assumption, and this is just me speculating here, my assumption is that his wife is probably homesick. He might be homesick, and BYU had enough money to throw at him. And so he came to Kentucky with a very high asking price and said, I want to go home. This is what it would take to keep me here away from home. And Kentucky told him, you are not that valuable to us. Sorry, we appreciate what you've done. And I do sincerely appreciate what Chandler has done for this program, but we can't do that. At the end of the day, whether you like it, whether I like it, whether anyone likes it, it's just business. That's what college basketball is now. That's what college athletics are now. It is just simply business. 9.7 points per game for 40% shooting, and the hope that he gets better and stays a consistent outside shooter, which, by the way, he was hot and cold this entire year. He started cold, he caught fire in the middle of the year, and he finished cold. You can't have somebody that consistently falls apart in March on your roster as a starting shooting guard. That's not, it's at 3.2 million with his other issues on the floor. So what have I continued to say? And I'm sure a lot of you guys have been saying this as well. Kentucky needs winning players. They need to look at the rosters that are winning consistently in college ball right now and ask themselves, can we construct something like that? If we lose a player like Chandler, can we make him up in the aggregate? Can we go and get a player or two that fills that role for maybe the same amount of money, a little bit more, a little bit less? How can we construct a national championship winning caliber team, a national title caliber team? Somebody like Collin Chandler at $3.2 million is not going to be a part of that game plan. I'm sorry. He's just not. And you could probably argue that some of these other players that we're going to talk about today maybe don't necessarily fit that role either. But again, it's context dependent. We don't know if this is going to be the end of the world, that Kentucky really misses Chandler. We don't necessarily know if this is going to be a thing that Kentucky looks back on and goes, whew, thank goodness we got rid of him when we did. Or maybe thank goodness he walked when he did, I guess we should say. We don't know. But for now, it does sting. It does sting a little bit. But I'm sure Kentucky can find an answer elsewhere. So again, thank you, Collin Chandler. This is I would argue, the most important player that has not graduated, that has left through the transfer portal so far for UK. And I think they can move past it. I want to get to some of your thoughts in the live chat here before we talk about these three players. I want to kind of get your feel as to whether or not you think it's a bad thing, whether or not you think it's a good thing. For me personally, it kind of sucks for a couple of different reasons, but I'm okay with it if Kentucky goes about this correctly, which I have a feeling they will. I think Keegan Brown and Pope and this staff are not, they aren't stupid. I think that they know what they're doing. I think it's going to be all right. Can we get Grant Darbyshire back for a fifth year? I sure wish we could. I actually thought about him on the drive back earlier today before I went live. How about that? All right, let's continue to break this down, talk with you guys here. Keep going in just a moment. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Mazda.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right. Continuing along here on today's episode of the show, thank you so much for tuning in. It's a blow of sorts, for sure, to see Collin Chandler gone after 2 seasons in the transfer portal. I want to remind you guys, if you have not subscribed to the show already, wherever you are watching, wherever you are listening, go ahead and do so. This is going to be, whether we like it or not now, a bit of a crazy offseason for the Cats because they've had so many players enter the portal. Malachi Marino declaring for the NBA draft with a possible return to Kentucky. We'll see what happens there. My assumption is that he's going to just simply get information as to how he can grow as a prospect. But we don't know. I will say this, and maybe you guys can flesh this out because I do want to get your thoughts and opinions on this. In my opinion, there needed to be a max exodus. There needed to be a cleaning of the house. There needed to be a restocking of the cupboard. You could not, last season, win a national title with that roster. And most of the players did not fit well. And so those players leaving doesn't necessarily bother me that much. I want to pull up a post from Brandon Ramsey over at KSR. He tweeted this out earlier. I find myself in lockstep with Ramsey on a variety of opinions for Kentucky. And this one, I am in the exact same boat here. Let me read this to you guys. This is Brandon Ramsey of KSR at BRamseyKSR on Twitter. Quite frankly, this is why I'm more open to a total rebuild than most. Even Marino, Chandler, Williams aren't worth chasing, in my opinion. When it comes to money, I would like to keep them. And like I said, I would even give them a premium due to the importance of retention. That is maybe worth $250,000 extra, not $1 million or whatever. I also believe that what you do with Marino, Chandler, and Williams is largely irrelevant if you don't hit home runs with at least 2 or 3 studs. It stinks that we never got to see a healthy Jalen Lowe operate Coach Pope's offense because I think it could have been pretty darn good. But ultimately, I'm not sure how you win a title. Sure, how you win a title with Jalen Lowe as your point guard. Let that linger for a second. He is a Sweet 16 at best player. I voiced my opinions on Otega Oweh as well. He is a Sweet 16 at best player, not a Final Four or title contender best player. You have to upgrade at that spot. Same goes for Denzel Aberdeen. He was the 6th man on a national title team. He was the 2nd best player on a round of 32 team. That stuff matters. Additionally, Kentucky's play at the 4 spot simply was not good enough this season. That is from Brandon Ramsey over at Kentucky Sports Radio. That is dead on. Yes, I'd like some of these players to come back. But you have to stop and ask yourself, at what point does retention and continuity trump the money you could spend elsewhere for more versatile, better players? At what point does having a guy for a 3rd year trump going to spend that money in the player on maybe two guys that end up being more valuable to the way you want your team to look? I would argue that last year's team, considering they were just simply okay, is worth throwing out the window and hitting the reset button on a very large portion of the roster and seeing what else we can do in the portal, or maybe the high school recruiting class with Mason Williams coming in and Tyron Stokes still not being out of the equation. I think that what Kentucky can do at guard, they got a lot of options. I think they can figure this out and end up getting something better when it comes to Chandler, when it comes to Lowe, when it comes to Jasper, when it comes to Garrison as a backup 5. There's Andrea Yelovich at the 4. They can upgrade at all of these spots. And now that they know, Kentucky knows, they've seen what they've looked at and seen what does and what doesn't work. They can go back to what does. We'll get to the live chat. Captain Crash here again. I really don't like that we're trying to build a team around Marino. I don't want to speak negatively about him, but he isn't just good enough to justify that kind of investment. I don't think we're building around him per se, unless that's like verbiage that Pope has used. But I think that he is a solid high floor piece that when paired with the right amount of talent can look pretty good. Now, I do think that the concerns are valid. I think that, are they making him too much of a building block with maybe some of the lack of high ceiling play that you get out of him? I think that's very fair. But I don't know if it's a team built around him. I would just say that he is an important stone. And if you get somebody like Stokes or some high profile guard play, maybe it doesn't matter as much, especially if you get a backup 5 that's like 7'2" and is just a phenomenal defender. I don't know. Do you think we should target Zoom? Yes, I said before Rob Wright entered the portal yesterday that Zoom Diallo would be the guy that I take immediately. I would not let that linger. If we can't get Rob Wright, I would try and lock down Diallo. I think that he can take an Elliot Cadeau type leap. I see it in him with the size, the playmaking, the shooting, the scoring. Zoom Diallo would be somebody that I would take in a heartbeat right now, yes. I hope next year's team has the last year's team's heart. I hope next year's team has the vibes of Pope's first team and the success that Pope has not had yet. I hope they make a deep March run. I hope they find a way to avoid losing double-digit games. I hope they win, and I hope we're happy watching them do it. I just want to see a successful year. It would be hard to find someone with Moreno's projected ability in the portal, especially with the mass amount of players that we need to bring in. I agree. Building block is a better term for what I meant. Your concerns are valid, I think. I've not heard building around about any player. That makes me believe that's the fans' perception, and why, because Marino was very good as a freshman. There were also some things that he struggled with. I mean, like, he's not the most athletic 5. I mean, again, we talk about high floor. I don't know. NCAA is proposing a 5-year eligibility starting at 19. This could allow Dawe to come back for year 5. I would reiterate what Brandon Ramsey said. I think that Dawe is one of my favorite players to come through Kentucky. At the same time, he's not the leading force, the driving force on a national championship squad. You got to get more talent in around him to take a load off of him. You got to get better shooting in. I'd love to have him back, but I mean, just because I like him doesn't mean that it's the right decision. I don't know. Derek says, I wish we had an X's and O's offensive coach. I can't remember the last time I saw set plays and amazing ball movement. It's all ISO screen garbage. I think that every third possession for the Cats, you got to see them actually run a set, and they would more than often than not score on it. This year's team just didn't do that consistently, and I don't know if it was Pope's aversion to calling plays. I don't know if it was just the personnel. He didn't feel like he could run the stuff that he wanted to succeed. I think that was something that was talked about a couple of times, where Pope said he was trying to dumb it down and make it as simple as possible, and clearly the team just never fully got it. So I don't know. Am I the only one who's over the Stokes thing? No, you are not. Absolutely not. Losing Chandler is a bad sign of things to come. He had good basketball IQ and is the best athlete on the team. His upside was huge. I think that's one way to look at it. And again, I can't tell you what to think, because we don't really know until we get to see next season and who Kentucky brings in. But I would lean, just personally, and I'm not telling anybody how to think here, personally, I would lean to the side of, let's see what Kentucky can do with that money that they otherwise would have thrown out at him. Can they find somebody that's as good of a shooter that can actually put the ball on the floor and is a little bit more of a consistent off-ball defender? Marino getting feedback from the draft process could be extremely beneficial. The kid is a hustler, will do whatever it takes to reach his goals. Are we still going after Quinn Ellis and Dink Pate? Not Quinn Ellis, and Kentucky had a Zoom call with Dink, I believe, yesterday. I'm not quite sure what the eligibility issues are for Dink. I've not touched that until we get like more official word, but Dink would be somebody that's still in the mix. Marino wasn't expected to play really, period. Kid held his own, and I think the tough love is because everyone sees how good he can be. I think that's fair. If Marino improves his handles, inside scoring ability, he'll be elite. He already has great footwork. I completely agree. What's pathetic is the last time our country was fighting a world war, 18-year-olds were going across the ocean to fight for less than a living wage, and now these boys asking for millions to ball. I don't know. A lot of people talking about the Virginia Tech transfer that I promise you guys tomorrow. He was on my notes today, but we're not going to get to him. I will promise you we will talk about the Virginia Tech like point forward. That is so good. We'll talk about him tomorrow. We're not going to talk about him today. Let's go ahead and get to these three players that I want to discuss. One of them from the high major level, other from mid-major level, two others from mid-major level. So I think all three of these players are interesting in their own way. We'll get to them in just a moment. Before we do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Indeed. Sponsor jobs, workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. So when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. So skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, you could spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, it's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's episode is also brought to you by Robinhood. So what if sports were traded like markets? Well, now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy and sell your positions live all game long and use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game, so it's people moving the action, and when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. You're no longer just a spectator, it's play-by-play and you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of the show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really, I do appreciate it here. Everybody in the live chat. We've got over 400 of you in here, and that is just bonkers to me. But we got some big news today, guys. Collin Chandler entering the transfer portal. Personally, I'm not that worried. It sucks for a couple of different reasons, but to me, not that bothered. Not that bothered. I also want to remind you guys here, just a brief little tidbit of information. Keep your mattress toppers intact. Don't go burning anything. Don't go cutting anything. Don't go lighting anything on fire. Just try and stay away from raccoon status as much as possible. I cannot emphasize that enough. I love that nobody's going to understand what I'm talking about. All right, so we got three players to talk about here today. Two, again, like I mentioned, from the mid-major levels, one of which from the high major levels. We'll start with the guy from Colorado. And I think a couple of you have already talked about this in the live chat. That's right. It's Isaiah Johnson. Isaiah Johnson at 6'1", 175. You know, you don't necessarily like the size. He's also not a good defender. But what you do like as a freshman is the volume scoring and the three-point shooting. 16.9 points per game. 2.9 rebounds per game. 3 assists, 1 steal per contest. 48.6% from the floor. 38% from deep on 4.5 three-point shots per game. He's a volume scorer that can score inside out at 6'1". Now, the size, not very exciting. But the kid's a bucket. He has, brace yourself, a 130.4 offensive rating. 130.4 26.4. Per 40 minutes, he's averaging 22. I mean, the kid is an absolute bucket. Schools to watch, according to Travis Branham, include Kansas, Ohio State, UCLA, Texas, Kentucky, Maryland, and more. And I can hear one of you typing right now. You're going to say, well, if Kentucky's in that group of programs going after Isaiah Johnson, doesn't really sound like those are national championship contenders per se, maybe outside of Kansas. Is that the group Kentucky wants to find themselves in? It's a fair question. There's the good, there's the bad for Isaiah Johnson. Somebody in the live chat literally just said in all caps, the sky is falling. Let's calm down. It's all right. Again, to everybody who's watching this right now, we will talk at length about Rob Wright tomorrow. We're not going to talk about him today. I want to lead tomorrow's show with it because I think it's that important. I don't think it's, I couldn't bury that in the show today. I have to talk about Rob Wright on his own. Zoom Diallo we talked about on yesterday's show. If you want to go check that out, I think that he is an immediate take for me. Isaiah Johnson, somebody that apparently Kentucky is interested in. Another player that is just an absolute bucket is Terrence Hill Jr., point guard out of VCU, setting up a Zoom call with Kentucky apparently at some point in the future. This past season, as a sophomore for the Rams, 15 points per game, also 2.7 rebounds, 2.8 assists, pretty low turnover rate, while shooting 47% from the floor and 37% from deep on 6 3-point attempts per game. At 6'3", 180, I mean, he's a little bit lighter than maybe what you would want at your point guard spot, but the kid's a bucket. The kid can shoot from anywhere. He's got insane range, really solid ball handler as well. I like Hill and Johnson as off-ball scorers, honestly. I would really like either of these guys at the 2, and maybe you get somebody like Rob Wright at the 1. I like both of these guys a lot. Lance, is there any news on Trent Noah? Do you have a guess on if he stays or goes? I have no idea, because so far with this entire roster, it seems like one of the biggest issues with kids entering the portal is that they're not being offered the money that they had last season. And I think that's a good thing, guys. So if you're Trent Noah and they say, look, we're going to cut your salary in half or more, do you stay? I've not heard anything, but my speculation here is that I would actually lean probably leaving, unless he just really likes it at Kentucky and he's comfortable in his role, which is somebody that sits on the bench. Honestly, as a West Virginia fan, why are you putting up with barely making the tourney and making tourney? Y'all are a blue blood. Yeah, we're trying not to put up with that. Trying really hard to not put up with that, which makes some of what's happening in the portal a little bit concerning to me. But also, Kentucky's not landed anybody yet, and also Tyron Stokes is still on the table. The final player I want to talk about here today is Deshaun Good, out of Robert Morris. It is not Goody, it is Good. 15.2 points, shot 62.9% from the floor, and 57% from 3. He averaged those 15 points to go along with 8.7 rebounds, 1.4 assists, a steal, and half a block per game at 6'8", 230, with a 105.6 defensive rating and a 139.9 offensive rating. The advanced analytics will tell you he's maybe not as impactful as those insane shooting splits, but you get scoring volume and you get somebody who can shoot the cover off the ball in the limited shots that he gets, 8.7 boards. Sounds like a really good stretch for in a Mark Pope offense. Now, Morauskas, as we talked about yesterday, could also be a really good fit out of St. Mary's. We'll just have to see what Kentucky does at that 4 spot, because they've got a ton, and I mean a ton of options. But Deshaun Good out of Robert Morris could be somebody that you look at. If Alvaro Fulgaris enters the portal out of Iowa, that's a guy that I would go after as well. So, Jimbo James, is that real? Or are you talking about, no, you're, for a second, I thought you were talking about Jizzle James out of Cincinnati. And for those of you watching that laughed at that, that's a real name. Look it up. What about Kwame Evans? We'll talk about him tomorrow as well. I just haven't had the chance to talk about some of these players that I'm not particularly excited about. I want to kind of keep it to the most important players until we get more information about some of these guys that I'm not necessarily excited about. And this is to not to say players like Kwame or Donnie Freeman or thoughts on Piss Jack Horseman. Bizjack, I think we talked about him a few episodes or a week or so ago. Actually, it might be a little longer than that. Bad defender, somebody within Butler's department, I'll say, said to me verbatim in person that he was very glad that Bizjack was gone and to please take him away from us. Just throw that out there in front of 500 people. Guess who the person was? Leave it in the comments below. I don't claim to have connections, but I had a pretty fun conversation with this guy. What if DJ Wagner comes back? I will end the channel. All due respect, I don't care about Bizjack. I want to make the joke. The Optimist is back. Wow. It's been so long, bro. It's been so long. I missed your comments. The Optimist constantly negative. I've never seen a positive comment from this man or woman in my life. And I'm just so glad that you're still among this community after you learned his true market value. The best BYU fan on the planet, the Optimist 9605. At this rate, Kentucky might need you to play next year. Hey, I'll suit up. It's I could run point. Now, if you want to ask questions about size, I'm 6'2". So, I mean, like, I could run point. I would be okay, I guess. Defensively, we might have some serious issues. I still have 3 years of eligibility left. Wagner heading to Memphis. Hope he plays well, man. Hope he plays well. That's also another reason why we've not talked about D-Dan Thomas that much, is because it's another, hey, no way you're running point at 6'2". Yeah, they got me down low. Or do you think I'm playing off ball? All right. Do I think Bradshaw will come back? Please, no. No, I don't. I do not. 6'5" point guard with injury issues. Sound perfect. Get him there. Get that man down there right now. I was actually exactly what I was about to say about D-Dan, is that, with the injury history there, why on earth would you go after him? So, all right, guys. I think that's going to do it for today's episode of the show. Keep your mattress toppers intact, chap. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDaw_. And you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Sorry about the news. And God bless.